I've got 7 important chess principles from a game that I just played where my opponent played the move a5, which is a brilliant move, leaving his queen to simply be captured. We're going to talk about this position and how we ended up here and what these 7 important principles are. Let's take a look. Now, the opening was kind of a mess, so I don't want you to pay too much attention to here. Some mistakes were made, and we end up in this position right here. So in the French, a lot of times people will attack on d4, which is what my opponent is doing, which I have that pretty well defended, so I'm not super concerned about that. But there is this threat on my b2 pawn. And this leads me to principle number 1. If you would like to pause, what do you think I played in this position? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, I actually ignored the pawn and developed my knight. Now, the engine doesn't like it because chess computers are so good, they know exactly what to do. A lot of times they'll grab some pawns and be able to get away with it. But when humans do that, a lot of times they get into trouble. And so principle number 1 is that it's dangerous to go pawn grabbing instead of developing your pieces. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm developing one piece. Then I'm bringing my rook to an open file, which you can kind of consider as sort of a developing move, right? It activates the rook to where it's starting to control squares of the board. And then I play bishop e2. So I kind of got 3 essentially developing moves for sacrificing these 2 pawns. And that's something that black has to be very careful doing. Because if I am able to mobilize these pieces and launch an attack, black hasn't castled yet. This bishop is still stuck here. Now, like I said, engine says you can do it and you can get away with it, but you do have to be careful, and I want you to be aware that it is dangerous, and you really need to know what you're doing if you're going to go pawn hunting, okay? So let's keep going. He played c4, and he totally locks up the center, which is actually kind of interesting, right? I mean, look at this. There is nothing going to be happening here unless I'm willing to, start sacrificing pieces. So it sort of almost divides the board in half, where you've got this section over here, and you've got this section over here, which is actually pretty fascinating. So I played queen to e3, only available square for my queen, actually, because I couldn't go here. Black decides to play queen c2, and what he wants to do is bring his queen over here to defend because he wants to castle here. All right, so I castled, he castles, knight to g5, I'm trying to launch the attack, he plays queen back, and I played f4 because I wanted to add a defender and also maybe think about f5 and activate the rook. All right, he captures, I capture, he goes h6, and this brings us to principle number 2. What move do you think I played here? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is rook to f3. Now, don't worry about the question mark. I want you to focus on the idea behind it. This is what's called a rook lift in chess. Okay, so a lot of times your rooks are good on a file, but they could be better if you do a rook lift, where you just bring it up. And what happens when you do this is you give yourself so many more options. See right here, I'm pretty much only controlling the f file. But now I could slide over to the G file. I could slide over to the H file, right? I have a lot of options that I didn't have before, and it's very easy to do this. Just a rook lift. Okay, now if there was more stuff happening over here, you could argue that I could use my rook in that direction as well, but in this case, it's primarily just here. But the rook lift is very, very powerful. Don't forget about the rook lift. All right, so let's see what happens. He decides to play h5, and the reason he's doing this is because he's afraid that if he tries to take, I'm going to maybe slide my rook over, or I'm going to take first and then slide it over here, and the rook is going to really be involved, and I think that's probably what would have happened. So h5 is a good attempt to try to just keep things locked up, because my pawns are sort of in the way of the rook now. Okay, so I played this rook over. He plays b5, and if you would like to pause, what move do you think I played here? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, I played rook to f6. Now, again, ignore the blunder for a minute, and let's think about the idea. So if I just sit back and do nothing, black has a very clear plan. He's going to start launching these pawns, and I'm not going to be able to stop him. I mean, just look at this. These are 2 connected pawns. He's got a rook behind him. Very, very dangerous. All my pieces are on the other side of the board. I have to do something. I have to do something. And Stockfish wanted me to try to defend or play this and just go with this approach, which I guess maybe actually doesn't make some sense to try to come through that way. But in my mind, I'm like, I need to do something. And this is the principle number 3. A lot of times you have to sacrifice a piece to launch an attack. Sometimes it's the only way to break through, right? And that's how I felt here. Of course, the engine tells me I'm not that smart, but on a principled matter, this I think was a decent move, right? And even though I'm going to lose the rook, this guy's coming up, which is going to make the queen move, or so I thought. And then I was going to come in with the bishop and then see what I could do with the pawns and the queen and, go from there. So my opponent did take the rook, and I captured. And then they played the brilliant move that I mentioned. They just left it there. They played a5, which is kind of wild because, most people are going to be like, oh, let me save my queen. This guy's like, no, I'm just going to leave it there. And I guess the idea is if I take it, well, then he gets to recapture with the pawn and things are still kind of blocked up. And how do I break through? So if you guys would like to pause, what do you think we should do here? If you had a chance to look at that, this brings us to principle number 4, which is when you're attacking, sometimes you need to sacrifice multiple pieces. And so the way that I did that was by first taking the queen, and then, bam, bishop takes h5. And again, it goes back to how do I break through and get to the king? And I felt like this was my best chance to do that. So he captures me, and I play the move queen to e2, trying to come in with the queen this way. Now, Stockfish is kind of ridiculous and wants me to play this move knight to e4, which, okay, I guess the idea is I want the knight to go there, so black's got to take me. But then when I take back, now my queen's coming in, and I'm threatening the knight over here, and apparently this is the better way to do it, although I didn't see that. Okay, so queen to e2, here we go. King up, I captured the pawn. The rook comes over, and this brings us to principle number 5. Now, before I explain principle number 5, I need to show you what's happening here. So, queen's under attack. I can't go here. I get captured. I can't go here. I can't go here. I can't go anywhere with my queen. So, I go back trying to come to f6. Then my opponent goes back to rook f8. And then I go back. And then they go back over here. And then I go back. Actually, I didn't go back. Sorry, I messed that up. I was thinking about going back, but then we're just going to get a draw, right? It's going to be threefold repetition. So this is principle number 5. Sometimes you need to trust your instincts. Now, some of you watching this video are like, Nelson, I just started playing chess like a week ago. I don't have chess instincts. And if that's you, that's okay. You can ignore this one. But for those of you who've been playing for a little while, maybe you've won some nice games, you kind of have this idea of like positions that you're good at, maybe, or positions that you've played in the past that led to a win. That's what I'm talking about. Like this feeling of like, I just feel like I should be able to win this. That's how I was feeling in this moment, right? I'm like, I don't really want to draw. Like I feel like I'm up on the clock. I just feel like the queen and the 2 pawn, like somehow, some way, I think that I should be able to win. Now I'm taking a risk, right? Because these pawns are going to keep coming. And if I can't get a checkmate or something very good over here, I'm going to lose eventually to the pawns. But I had to trust my instinct, and that's what I did. And that's why I played queen g4 to avoid the perpetual back and forth threefold repetition, okay? So here we go. My opponent continues with the attack, and I'm doing the same thing. h5, he captures me here. I save my knight, and c2, pawn is coming down. I'm running out of time. This brings us to principle number 6. What do you think I played here? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is queen to f4. And this is principle number 6. Sometimes you can attack and defend at the same time. And a lot of times that's a really great strategy because I'm stopping this entirely, unless black just wants to sacrifice it and give me the pawn for free. But I'm also threatening to come in here and start trying to checkmate the king. And so it's a very powerful move because black has to figure out, well, do I defend here or do I try to help this pawn somehow by like bringing in my other pieces? But do I have time for that, right? And so queen f4, I feel like, was a very powerful move. My opponent played for it. So my opponent played rook to h7, which was not a good move. And this brings us to the 7th and final principle. What do you think I played here? If you had a chance to look at that, I played the move g6. And principle number 7 is that connected passed pawns are very, very powerful. And that's what we're seeing here. These guys are both passed pawns because there's no pawns that can stop them. They're also connected because they're right next to each other. And when they start working together and pushing down the board, look out. They are a force to be reckoned with, and that's what we see here. And the game actually finished shortly. Black decided to bring the rook over. I played check. They went here, and if you would like to pause, what's the final touches of this position? Get a chance to look at that. It's queen check, which forces the king up here, and then I can checkmate with the queen or a rook, whatever you prefer, which is pretty nice. And that's the end. Actually, is there a faster checkmate here? Did I miss one? Oh, interesting. Yes, you can go check. I actually didn't see that until just now when I realized that I could have done it faster. There you go. That's the fast way. You could have also done it the way that I did, which was the slow way, but really nice game, and hopefully you learned something from those 7 principles. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. By the way, if you like this video, go check out this one. It's the same format as this one. You'll enjoy that one as well. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.